it doesn't mean that anyone's going to show up at your door or want that product. You have to have the other. You've got to lever yourself out of that space and meet your customers where they are.
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
So the question goes directly to you, David. How come you, having a software development background, understood and be able to go into the uncomfortable space and zone, which is generating leads,
Yep.
marketing, sales, selling my product, which is, I
Mm-hmm.
understand, it's something really, really uncomfortable and really, really challenging for a software developer, meaning a product person. So how you
Mm-hmm.
manage to remove one hat and to wear another one, which is completely challenging for you, and
Mm-hmm.
how you mitigate this in your early days?
Well, I think that's a really, really good question. And so let me answer that by going back a little bit. So I had mentioned that my father was a small businessman. He was a land surveyor. So that meant, and again, in Canada, which meant that land surveying as an outside job, winter, summer, spring, and fall. And we lived in a town that lived in, lived and breathed the oil business. It was an oil town. So when one of these oil guys called and they wanted a well site or a pipeline or a lease or something, there was no such thing as tomorrow. It was like now. So I remember, and my dad he was incredibly good at his job. But if he didn't answer the call now, then he was out of business. Because
Wow.
these guys would never call again. So I remember surveying with my dad Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. I remember being out there with a pickaxe trying to dig a hole in frozen, in ground that's literally frozen like a rock because it's 25 below and it's
Wow.
blowing like fury. So I mean, that's the way boom and bust is. It's just everything has to happen now. And I realized that, and I asked my dad about this later on, and he said, again, if he didn't go and do it, it didn't matter how good he was at his job. And like I said, he was very good. He was actually internationally renowned for the work that he had done. He'd be out
Wow.
of business. So I learned early on that how good you are at something doesn't make any difference. You have to meet your customers where they are. And as a tech guy, you know full well that your customers are not sitting there writing code. You will never meet your customer in that space. So I learned that lesson very hard, when I was young. And my first tech company, I was really fortunate to partner up with a very large nutraceutical company in the United States. So I had software that was running in 2,500 different doctors' offices because these guys had a professional sales team that went out and sold it for me. I just had to deliver the product. I pitched them on it. They believed me that I could write it. And then they sent me on my way to do my thing. And then they turned their whole sales force loose on it. So I realized again very quickly that there's two sides to this coin. There's the product side, and then there's the sales side. And no matter how good I would have been able to do at the piece of software that I wrote, and I know I could do a good job at that, it never would have gotten off the ground had I not engaged with this company, which was, I mean, they were a fantastic company, but it was completely opposite to the way that to my worldview. So again, it was literally someone
Opposite how
taking
you think, opposite about everything.
everything. But it was an eye opener because if I don't engage with those people, I am going nowhere. And I think the last thing I'll say is, and I call this the Field of Dreams fallacy. It's from the Kevin Costner movie Field of Dreams, where he's an ex baseball player and he's having visions of the ghosts of baseball past showing up, and he builds this giant field in his baseball pit or baseball field in a cornfield in the middle of Iowa. And his daughter says to him as part of this movie, because no one understands why he's building this thing, but he has these visions of these baseball players and no one else can see them. So his daughter says to him, if you build it, they will come. So that works for the movies, but it does not work in real life. If you build it, that does not mean that they will come. It's the field of dreams fallacy. So just because you built a great product doesn't mean that anyone's going to buy it. Just like think of it. Back in the day, having a website was a big deal. Oh my God, I have a website. Now what? Does that mean you get more customers? Does that mean that your conversion rates go through the roof? Does that mean that your lead flow is all that is completely solved? Does that mean that you'll have very talented people coming to work for you just knocking down the door? No, it doesn't mean anything at all. All it means is that you have a website, full stop, everything ends there. So just because you've built this fantastic piece of software that might solve this problem, it doesn't mean that anyone's going to show up at your door or want that product. You have to have the other. You've got to lever yourself out of that space and meet your customers where they are.
Yeah, and then, but this is great because I think that what you just described, yeah, because we see some statements out there that people say, well, if the product is good, it will sell by itself.
No.
I'm gonna create a great software, and because I'm a great programmer, and because my software is amazing, it will sell by itself. And this is not how really the industry
No.
works. This is way far ahead. And
Yeah.
also, okay, Bert, let me ask you another question as well.
Mm.
In your humble opinion, which is I value a lot, yeah, because you do
Okay.
know what you're talking about. If you have $100 to build a tech company, yeah, how much funds would you put to go from 0 to 1? How much out of this 100 you will use for software development, and how much you will use for sales and marketing? I'm only giving you $100. It's just an analogy, so
Okay.
our tech entrepreneur listening understand the budget, the resources, and the energy that
Hmm.
goes into these processes. So I think we help them a lot to manage better their money.
Hmm. Yeah. I think if I had to do it with $100 as a representative amount, I'd spend $80 on that, figuring out who I'm actually building something for. I'd spend $80 right out of the box trying to understand exactly where my customer is. I'm trying to understand exactly where I can meet them. And once I understand where I can meet those people, then I can start developing a product. So of course you have in mind a product, but the chances of that product hitting the mark are zero because you yourself are not your customer. You're just some guy with an idea. And um, unless you can actually, like I've said, a couple times now, unless you can understand where you're going to plug into your customer, then and you imagine it this way. Imagine you're standing on the a railroad track and the train is coming at you. And if you stay on the track, you're going to get run over. So what you want to have is that customer train run you completely over. But the railroad tracks are only what maybe 3 feet wide. So I can take one big step left or right, and that train's going to go whizzing by me, and all I'll get is a big blast of hot air and nothing. It'll whiz by me and I'll be unscathed. So it's very easy to miss the mark. So that's why I'd spend $80 out of the 100, making sure that I'm standing square in the middle of the railroad track. So when the customer train comes, it runs me flat, it runs me right over. And once you answer that question, then you go,
Love the
because you're good,
analogy, right?
because yeah, because and then if you're a really good programmer, once you know exactly what the customer wants, you can bank something out right away and then get it into the marketplace and then have your customers tell you if this is good or bad. And this is where you're going to fail wildly because you're going to think, okay, this is going to work. This is great. I know exactly where these customers are. I know how to talk to them. And then it's going to be wild. It's going to be wrong. But remember, you're only a couple feet left or right of the railroad track. So you
Absolutely.
may be so you may be wrong, and the train is whizzing by you at 100 miles an hour, and you're literally feeling like the world is passing you by at 100 miles an hour. But all you have to do is make that shift a little bit left or right. And if you're completely and utterly wedded to your original concept, then it's going to be very, very, very very, very difficult to make that lateral step left or right to get back on the train tracks. So I'd spend $80 on, figuring out, where,
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
yeah. And then, and then,
Uh,
and then it would be 10, basically 10 on development, because that's one of your core strengths. You can do that really quickly. And then I spent the
you're a
last
developer
10.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can do this, right? This is what you're really good at. So you don't have to spend a lot of money doing the things that you're really good at, clearly. And then the last 10, so The last 10 I would spend tweaking. I would be just refining this message a little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit left, a little bit right. And the product doesn't, the product doesn't have to, or if it's a piece of software, it doesn't have to change dramatically in order for it to actually hit. And
when it sells, more money will come and you can improve it, right?
Yes, of course. This is an iterative process, right? It's an iterative process. There isn't anyone. Well, there's 1,000 adages, things like, the journey of 1,000 miles, begins with a single step, and all those kinds of things. So everything about life is iterative. There is nothing. LeBron James didn't wake up in the NBA, right? Wayne Gretzky didn't wake up in the National Hockey League. So the list, Patrick Mahomes didn't wake up, on an NFL football field. Steve Jobs didn't wake up as the CEO of Apple. No, they got there iteratively, like step by step by step, failing miserably along the way. So, and of course, they never took those. They may have taken those failures to heart to learn from them, but it never stopped them. It didn't grind them down.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.